Hello, you're watching Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Sampet. Welcome to your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. In this new edition, we take you in the footsteps of our guest from the diaspora through her special bond with Ethiopia. We will, of course, be looking at Addis Ababa, but also Eastern Congo. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. A French entrepreneur from the African diaspora in Ethiopia. It is the choice of Nathi Ngoy, daughter of an exiled Congolese, the family heritage that has brought her to work with the African continent and bring prosperity. She found extraordinary master craftsmen and precious allies for her leather goods creations. She's our guest this week.
Why
not Africa and try to build something that would be of value there? It was a way for me to take advantage of being mixed race and return to Africa, the continent my father had left for other reasons.
In the DRC, North Kivu, a local NGO is fighting to assist the displaced people most weakened by the armed clashes still in progress in the region.
I've noticed that over time, I've developed a special bond with them. Every day I wake up, I look forward to coming and sharing something with them.
Long live the African priests. In some French parishes, these priests from the continent allow the churches to continue to exist, and they are very much appreciated.
And that they also bring with them a breath of fresh air and a different approach that can only be beneficial to us.
We open this edition with the remarkable work of a local civil society organization in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, more precisely in the province of North Kivu, where violent clashes have pitted the armed forces of the DRC since March 2022 against the rebel movement M23. The result is, among other things, thousands of displaced people, around 510,000 according to the United Nations, mostly rural people. Our correspondent Daniel Michomboro met with the collective Goma Active, which provides food aid to the most vulnerable women and children. Take a look.
It is 7:30 a.m. and Binti Fataki is already getting ready to meet the group. The young girl from Goma has already carved out an agenda for herself. As a volunteer in the collective, Francine shares the agenda of the day to the displaced of Kanyaruchinya in the north of Goma. Today she's gathering some clothes to distribute to the displaced population after serving them some porridge. A father, a mother, and a child will benefit from her help.
I just woke up and I'm preparing some clothes to give to the displaced people. It has become a habit for us, especially for me, because I have been doing it every day for over 2 months. And it is with great pleasure and compassion that we put a smile on the faces of our displaced compatriots and victims of this war.
Indeed, a daily job, according to this active Goma collective. It is time to return the favor to these people who had previously supplied the city of Goma with agricultural products for several years. Everything is prepared in this white tarp set up in Kanyaruchinya in the middle of the IDP camp, whether it is porridge or even other meals for the displaced. Like every day before serving the meals, songs and therapeutic dances led by psychologists are performed to try to make the displaced children forget their traumas and thus put a smile on their faces.
As you can see, it's always a pleasure to put a smile on the children's faces. It has become a routine for me. There's as much pleasure in giving as in receiving. It's a joy for me to do it, to share. They are too endearing. I've noticed that over time. I've developed a special bond with them. Every day I wake up, I look forward to coming and sharing something with them.
Sharing is what makes Zena Ange smile this morning. Pregnant, this mother of 4 recognizes the efforts of these young people who sacrifice themselves to find something to give to the displaced who have come empty-handed.
This collective Goma Active feeds us with porridge, often bringing beans that we eat and clothes we wear for us and our children. They also bring staples such as rice, beans, and sometimes sugar, which we often eat while waiting for the big NGOs to come and help us. We are very happy and we say thank you very much to these young people. We really say thank you very much to them. It's a noble gesture. Look how happy our children are when they eat the porridge. It keeps us going when we have nothing to eat, especially during this rainy season. Look how happy all these mothers are. They are having porridge. We really thank those who have a thought for us in this tough time. It's a relief. Thank you very much.
The collective preferred to share the meal with the displaced to celebrate Christmas. There were food supplies, basic necessities, and staples. This initiative started on May 22, 2022 in Nyiragongo territory. Eugene Boingo says that his organization wanted to act like firemen to bring help to these people. These children, these mothers are our brothers, our sisters, or our mothers. They are the most affected. We are the ones who will have to take care of these people because they are suffering. If the international NGOs can come quickly to help us. At the moment, the NGOs have taken time to react, so we decided to act by doing what we can do together and start to alleviate the pain of these children and nursing mothers. We've been here for a while. It's the 54th or 55th day, if I remember correctly, and we're here regularly during all this time. This is not the first time that Goma Active has intervened. The collective also helped during the Nyiragongo volcanic eruption of May 22, 2021, north of the city of Goma. This eruption led to the displacement of nearly 400,000 people, the death of 32 people, and the destruction of several hundred houses, according to an official report. These young people had assisted and helped hundreds of victims of the volcanic eruption.
She created the Inaden line of leather goods, which means craftsman in the Tamashek dialect, a language of Berber origin. And it's no coincidence our guest Natia Ngoy has indeed drawn from her family history and her love of authentic craftsmanship the deep desire to work with Africa. And very logically, her steps led her to the lands of the largest African herd, Ethiopia. She shared her journey and her challenges to Laurence Strass and Thierry Schiller.
Natia Ngoy, hello. Welcome to Initiative Africa, founded an accessories and leather goods brand Inaden in 2013. We wanted to create a company as well as work with Africa. Why?
Parce que j'ai grandi
Because I grew up in a mixed family with a father from the Congo who gave me the desire to build something that connects me with the continent, with Africa. He had many regrets about leaving his country, mostly for political reasons. And he really transmitted to me the idea that in Africa there was a lot to do, that you could do everything, anything. And then when I grew up, finished my studies and had my first professional experience, I realized that it's true. Why not Africa and try to build something that would be of value there? It was a way for me to take advantage of being mixed race and return to Africa, the continent my father had left for other reasons.
To produce your bags, you collaborate with African artisans in a workshop in Ethiopia. How does this work?
Well, that's right. It's a country I chose for leather goods because it's not well known. It's something that I discovered when I did my research to set up my business. It's the biggest livestock country on the African continent. It's a big exporter of skins, and I thought I should go there to produce a brand of bags. And so I went there, visited many workshops, met people, established relationships of trust, and pushed the doors of various workshops. It aroused my curiosity and I started learning. I didn't know anything about the leather industry, how to work with leather,
qui est lié au cuir, au travail du cuir. Et en fait,
and you mentioned collaboration. Yes, it's a partnership. Today, after 10 years, we can talk about partnership indeed. It is really on a win-win basis. I come up with ideas, I come up with a project, and I exchange them with people who want to participate in it, who also see some interest, whether economic or other, and want to grow together with my business.
Recently, inflation has risen sharply in Africa. All exporters are feeling it. How are you dealing with this situation at your level?
Alors oui, c'est une situation qui est pas évidente.
So yes, it's a situation that is not obvious, especially recently. I was surprised by my last production. It surprised everyone, so it affected my activity and the raw materials. The price of raw materials has tripled. We also have energy prices that have really increased. And so for now, there was no other choice than to absorb these costs, in fact, to absorb and accept it in a certain way. Increase in these costs, we don't have a choice. We have been hit hard by this inflation. In Ethiopia, they were also quite strongly affected and surprised. I mean, for them too, it's not easy. They find themselves buying materials costing 3 times more all of a sudden. They're a bit helpless. So there are 2 options. Either you stop doing business with them and then you stop everything, or you support the activity. You absorb the costs, the shock, and try for the next time maybe to either rework perhaps the sourcing, anticipate better, and maybe keep more stocks. There are other ways of possibly protecting ourselves against this inflationary shock.
Donc ça implique une sorte de partage de
It involves some sort of burden share. Will this somehow strengthen the relationship between you, a young French company, and these Ethiopian artisans?
Oui, je pense que d'une certaine manière, ça
Well, yes, that puts everyone in the same boat. Now, when you're faced with a context like this, when you're told that materials have tripled anyway, and that it's justified, here we're talking about imports, where, for example, you want to make leather, so you import chemical components that come from Italy or the United States. So the scarcity, the cost of the product, all that justifies it.
Le coût du produit, enfin tout ça fait que ça se justifie. En fait,
these are not costs that come out of nowhere. In fact, when your partner explains this to you and that he's annoyed, as you are, he knows your position. He knows that you have been working with him for years.
Il n'est pas très à l'aise de vous annoncer ça. Donc,
he's not comfortable telling you that. We try to understand where it comes from. When we adopt a position, we also try to explain that it's difficult to get this information last minute and that it will impact the rest of the activity. But we are in an honest discussion, open, and we try to find solutions. Yes, this necessarily strengthens the bonds. We remain in this relationship of trust and burden sharing, as you say. It allows us to strengthen our ties.
Je pense que ça permet de renforcer des liens.
Vos produits sont fabriqués en Afrique.
Your products are made in Africa, but the design is still done in Europe. What do you think of African designers? What do you see emerging in this sphere?
Alors moi, je vois émerger beaucoup de créativité.
So I see a lot of creativity emerging. I'm delighted today that African designers are being honored. We can see the extent to which Africa inspires the international fashion scene.
On voit les influences, on les voit dans les défilés.
We can see the influences, we can see them in the catwalks, we can see them everywhere, in the choice of patterns, textiles. And finally today, the fact that African designers are working with traditional African textile fabrics with this desire to promote African know-how and cultural heritage is excellent.
Une génération de designers africains.
But there's also a whole generation of African designers who also work with other materials, not necessarily from the continent, and who also show that there's this mix, there's this influence of fashion, which is not necessarily limited to who you are, where you come from, but simply to talent. And yes, there are talented designers in Africa who don't necessarily limit themselves to working only with a loincloth, kente or indigo, who can also work with other fabrics just because they are talented, they are creative, and really they send out a very positive very dynamic image of the talent and potential of Africa in general.
Du potentiel de l'Afrique d'une manière générale.
Welcome to the second part of our show. This week, Pope Francis arrives in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a capital event in an African country with the highest number of Catholics and also the homeland of the first black bishop of the continent. Abroad, African priests also occupy a growing presence in the various churches. No less than 800 African priests have thus joined French parishes every summer during the holidays for replacements. Many bishoprics also simply call on African priests to take charge of parishes on a daily basis, in towns as well as in rural areas. And it's going pretty well, despite the cultural differences. Take a look.
It is 9:30 in the morning and Arnold Eklund is starting his first Mass. He has been working here at Bretigny-sur-Orge in the Paris region for several months. But Father Arnold is not the first African priest to preach in front of this congregation.
They're more accessible and it's easier. They are accessible, more friendly and younger, that's a fact. It's perfect. We understand you perfectly. Thank you. It's very good.
A student of canon law during the week and a priest on the weekend, Father Arnold is from the Diocese of Kipalime in Togo. Although the content is the same, the approach certainly isn't.
The Mass isn't celebrated with the same energy and enthusiasm here as in Togo. When a choir leads the Mass, it's a real party. People dance around, there are tam-tams, the organ plays, and with all the musicians, it's really lively. We celebrate grace like Christ rising from the tomb.
Each year, some 1,600 foreign priests come to France as part of an exchange known as Fide Donum, the gift of faith. More than half of them are from the continent, and most of these come from Benin and Congo-Kinshasa. The Conference of French Bishops sees the arrangement as a virtuous case of give and take.
The
idea is to accept that they are coming here with their culture, traditions and training, and that they also bring with them a breath of fresh air and a different approach that can only be beneficial to us. The number of people taking to the priesthood has fallen in France, and we cannot deny that the clergy are aging. So more than 10% of our priests are not French, and we need them here.
The
average age of the clergy here in France is 71. The average age of the foreign priests is 42.
In France, just 2% of Catholics are actually practicing, and the Church is struggling to cope with shortages of priests. Each year, on average, 90 priests are ordained in France. In Togo, a country with a tenth of the population, the number is close to 60. Although they are generally well accepted by their new congregations, these foreign priests sometimes find it hard adjusting to their new lives.
I didn't find it easy at first. I felt bored and nostalgic. I'd never eaten breakfast, lunch and dinner alone. We always did that together. So at first it was tough. Anyway, I'm getting used to it now. I'd never cooked before. I remember before leaving for France, a nun told me, "You will know you're a priest when you get to France."
It was much the same for Emmanuel Degbe when he first arrived in France 5 years ago. Father Emmanuel is from the same diocese as Father Arnold. He too says Mass every weekend. In a month's time, he will be presenting his history thesis. Today, Father Emmanuel has a new member in his congregation. He knows that she will have to deal with problems in following her faith that Christians in his country don't come across.
In Africa, believers are accepted by society. There is nothing shameful about going to church. But in Europe, especially in France, you risk humiliation if you say you're religious. In France, I would say the church is persecuted because people make fun of believers just because of their creed. Despite that, there are those that embrace their faith. I think they should be congratulated for that.
Father Arnold and Father Emmanuel have no plans to stay in France once they have finished their studies. If the Diocese of Képalime agrees, they will go back to Togo. Once there, they will be faced with the rise of the evangelical churches that are drawing people away from conventional churches.
Let's get back to our guest, Natia Ngoy. She tells us how the rich African craft tradition can be preserved. Let's listen to her.
Natia Ngoy, vous êtes française.
Natia Ngoy, you were born in France of Congolese origin. How do you feel about arriving in Africa as a young French entrepreneur? Is your cultural mix an advantage or a disadvantage?
Oh, c'est une question pas si évidente.
Well, it's not such an obvious question. First, it's intimidating when you're a young French woman, a young entrepreneur, and you're setting foot for the first time in a country you don't know. It's true that I chose to go to Ethiopia for my business.
Vraiment pragmatique. Je connaissais pas ce pays du tout.
It was a pragmatic choice. I didn't know this country at all. So yes,
C'est vrai que moi, après 10 années à faire
I was necessarily intimidated. And it's true that after 10 years of going back and forth to Ethiopia, of having established relationships there, of having spent much time really getting into the rhythm of the local people, well, I think that it's really through these trips that we have a form of humility that allows us to establish relationships with the people on the ground and not to arrive on conquered ground, because sometimes this is what we are criticized for, or at least that's what people may assume. That's the impression they might get.
Peut y avoir cette impression-là.
Une classe moyenne supérieure
An upper middle class is developing in Africa and a wealthy population is in large urban centers. Are there a potential target for Inaden?
Cible pour Inaden.
Alors oui, ce serait une cible.
So yes, they would be a perfect target. There's a real desire among Africans today to consume differently.
Des Africains de consommer différemment. Alors, c'est vraiment cette classe moyenne.
It's really this middle class that has aspirations, the means. They work, they have a taste for beautiful things, and they can afford them.
Pendant très longtemps, les références, c'était des références
For a very long time, the references were Western bronze, and Western style. Today, I think we can see that there are a lot of concept stores, a lot of African galleries, a lot of designers who are setting up in Africa, in a lot of countries, and who want to offer beautiful products, quality products to this middle class, seeking to consume differently.
De la qualité à cette classe moyenne qui aspire à consommer différemment,
to buy beautiful products which are made by Africans, made in Africa, and perhaps which suit them more, and hence create added value through this consumption.
Leur permet de se valoriser à travers.
We could talk about some sort of commitment towards local consumption, some kind of engagement, and also there's this desire to be proud of what we can produce here or what we can find here locally.
Ici, localement.
Pourtant, 98%.
Yet 98% of your customers are still outside Africa. Would you like to see some change here?
Rapidement, voire changer.
Oui, ça a toujours été un peu ma volonté.
Yes, it has always been my wish, and at the same time, I have been confronted with this reality. Today, Inaden is distributed mainly in France and Europe. So finding stores in Africa, finding the right points of sale, the right places where we can offer our products at a specific price to a clientele that can afford them is not an obvious challenge on the African continent, but it is starting to take root.
Moi, je vois bien que depuis quelques années, vraiment, il y a.
For a few years now, there has been this proposal for this market which is still emerging. So I'd like to work on the development of stores and points of sales in Africa. For a few years now, 3 or 4 years, I have really seen a movement emerging in France, in Europe, with this desire to consume African, to consume made in Africa. And hopefully customers realize that, okay, today there are alternatives. We don't have to go and consume from big luxury brands that may not bring anything to the continent, but to go and support initiatives, brands that have a link with who we are. There's a real desire to consume in an engaged manner. I mean, we, the Afro-descendants, the African diaspora, because that's also how we're going to support a positive movement and participate in change.
You will soon be creating a line of jewelry, another area in which you will be working with African craftsmen.
Oui. Oui, tout à fait. Alors, depuis...
Yes, absolutely. So, for a few seasons now, I've been working with Tuareg jewelers, master artisans. I really like to talk about master artisans because you can get an idea of Tuareg jewelry by seeing them sitting cross-legs making the jewels like that.
Mais en fait, c'est un artisanat qui est centenaire.
But in fact, it's an art, a handicraft, centuries old, that is traditional. They clearly have some kind of magic in their hands. I find it magical to see what they can do with very few tools.
Très peu d'outils. Et du coup, avec les bijoutiers Touareg...
And so, with the Tuareg jewelers, I have this idea to mix, to really converge their know-how. This tradition that they have, that they pass on from generation to generation, and to combine it with modernity, style, a design that will speak to my clients, that will talk to women who like beautiful objects, who like craftsmanship, who want simple things that are authentic but of quality.
Les choses simples, qui sont authentiques mais de qualité. Et l'idée, c'est vraiment de réussir.
And the idea is really to succeed in mixing the two. So I've had a small range of jewelry for a few seasons now. The idea is to go a little further and preserve this know-how, enhance it, and find finesse of the work. We don't work on molds. Each piece is made by hand. And where you find this Tuareg identity, which is very specific to craftsmanship and to the Tuareg jewelry making art.
À la bijouterie Touareg, mais de lui apporter, de lui insuffler quelque chose de...
But to give it a little more modern touch, so that it can appeal to people who like Inaden and who like fashion.
Ou qui aiment simplement la mode, quoi.
Alors justement, vous dites qu'il y a énormément de talents et de
Indeed,
ressources
you
en
mentioned that
Afrique.
there are a lot of talents and resources in Africa.
Apparemment, c'est le
Do you
cas.
feel
Vous
engaged in
entretenez
a
des
promotion
efforts
and
pour
protection of this
valoriser,
African
protéger
craftsmanship?
cet
And
artisanat
if yes,
africain.
how?
Et comment s'y prendre?
Oui, je pense que c'est très
It is very important to preserve it, to promote it.
de le valoriser. Il y a énormément de savoir.
There's a real loss of know-how, in fact.
Comment les préserver?
So how do you preserve
Je
it?
pense que c'est à travers peut-être des initiatives.
It's through initiatives like mine, but also like others are doing locally. There are also people locally who are committed to this. It's to bring this know-how, give it a more modern side, give this craft a new life, so that even locally, people can realize that it has value.
De redonner des lettres de noblesse à cet artisanat, que même localement les personnes puissent se rendre compte que oui, ça a de la valeur en fait, et aussi c'est de rémunérer
And pay
justement les
the
artisans.
craftsmen more fairly. They were looked down on in society.
Vraiment, le
And we have to
travail
change that and show people that this craft is rich and can bring value. And this comes with the design work.
Et je pense que ça vient avec un travail de design, un travail de promotion aussi.
Promote these crafts to explain and tell the story behind the products. And then, above all, the people who make them can support themselves, can earn a living, and they can also be proud of their work.
Besoin, puissent gagner leur vie et que puissent être fiers aussi de leur travail.
It's really through this that we can succeed.
Par cette filiation en fait. Voilà.
Thank you, Nathalie Ngoy, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's it. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, find Nathalie Ngoy's interview and the replay of our shows on our website, africaonair.com. You can also follow us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week and goodbye.